Hello and thank you again for joining College 2 Consulting. Today's class is going to be about human capital cases, and these are very, very specific to human capital type firms. Like Deloitte has a human capital practice, Accenture has a very strong one too, and you can look at Mercer or Towers Watson. Those are some other very, very big players in the human capital space. And before we start, let me mention one thing. Human capital is not equal to human resources. Human resources is things that need to get done, such as hiring people and getting payroll done, stuff like that. Human capital is really how to use people effectively, and that's what it really means. Okay? So let's look at an example. Let's say you get this case. Company X needs to know how to improve its talent and HR operations. So on our framework sheet of paper, even though it's a human capital case, I still want to know about Company X. So here's what I want to look at. I want to look at the product, the competition, and the industry. Now once I get that done, we can start moving into human capital. And there are three things we're going to look at. We're going to look at the people, the process, and the technology. So first, we're going to start off with people. People here, I want to know a couple things about the people that work for Company X. I essentially want to know, what is the culture like at Company X? Is it a very zany type culture? Is it like a Google, or is it very strict and more blue collar? Another thing I want to know is talent acquisition and management. How are we getting people who are good, have the skill sets that we need, and how are we managing them, and how are we stopping them from leaving? Okay. Next is process, and process has a couple components. So first thing I want to know maybe how are skills being transferred? How are people learning? And remember, human capital is all about people. So when I say process, I don't really mean like supply chain and manufacturing. I mean processes. How does it relate to people? So in this instance, how are skills being transferred? And also, how are people being compensated? With, especially with executives, how are we maintaining those types of people? Okay, and the last part is technology. Technology, the first thing we're going to look at is something called HR service delivery. And this is really how are those HR services being delivered, for lack of a better definition. So how are payrolls being processed, and how are issues that employees might have with the company being handled, that type of stuff. Next one is performance reporting. How are we rating our people to make sure, in a technology way, to make sure that they are performing the most optimal they can perform, and how are we able to see this type of data? Okay, so human cap is essentially how work is made enjoyable. First thing we're going to talk about is the people. And with that, we're looking at culture. So the first thing you want to do is you want to assess the current culture of the client in order to determine what solutions will work. Let's do an example. Let's say you're working with Zappos. Zappos is a very easygoing, very kind of frivolous type of company that's very flat in structure. So to propose any type of solution that is suited for a type of culture that would work with a bank, an investment bank, probably won't work with Zappos. Okay, so really get to understand that culture so you don't put in faulty solutions that just won't work. Next is talent acquisition. So talent acquisition and management, it means acquiring more skilled laborers as well as getting rid of those that provide low return. So how do we get people into the company that are really, really good, and how do we keep them, and how do we get rid of those that aren't good? And this is something to really think about, especially when you have cases that deal with mergers and acquisitions. Then you might be asked to reduce the headcount of people and reduce overlap. And talent acquisition management is a great way to look at that. So we do a skills assessment. We find out who has what skills do we need for the company, and then we kind of get rid of those people that don't have necessary skills, or they do have them, but they're just not performing well. Next part is the process. And so we have something called skills transfer. This means that there needs to be a way to transfer and teach skills in risk of top talent leaving. So if you have one guy who is really, 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 really good at his job, and no one else is good at his job at the company, if he leaves, then you're kind of screwed. Now you have no one that can backfill and no one that can do what needs to be done. So there should be a process for skills transfer, so that if this person leaves, there's a way where other people can pick it up, or other people can pick it up even before this person leaves. You, again, are diversifying your talent. Okay? And then we have compensation. Is there a system in place to award top talent in order to retain it? Do we have a way to keep people who are really, really, really good, and to have them to want to stay with the company. And compensation doesn't just mean money. It can mean other things as well, like recognition or vacation or whatever, okay? But there's another thing to look at for process. And last is technology. So HR service delivery. This is essentially how you make HR processes easy, such as payroll, staffing, feedback. Is there a actual technology system put in place to handle all this stuff? And with this part, you might be asked to look at an Oracle solution or an SAP solution or whatever. But it's an actual piece of software that will allow the employees to track their payroll, track how staffing is going, or to provide feedback, okay? So that's what HR service delivery means. And remember, human capital and HR are not synonymous. HR is getting stuff done for people, and human capital is how to use people's talents, essentially. And last is performance reporting. This means using a current solution, such as Oracle, SAP, whatever, to help measure employee performance. So this is a good way, a technology way, to see how are employee A and employee B doing. Are they being utilized to their optimal rate, or are they not? So we have 3 different areas to look at for human capital cases: people, process, and technology. And let's put it back into the case. So let's say we finish this case, and the prompt was, again, Company X needs to know how to improve its talent and HR operations. First thing we did is we looked at the market, and we understood what the product is, what the competition is like, and the industry. Then we looked into human capital. And here there were a couple of factors. One was people. People, we wanted to know, what is the culture like, as well as what's the talent acquisition and management like. And here we found out that the culture for Company X is very kind of easygoing and laid back. So we wanted to put some solutions that would help that would align with that type of company. Also, with the talent acquisition management, because of this type of culture is very appealing to maybe a younger crowd, we want to really acquire this younger crowd to keep the culture going, okay? But the process, what we looked at is, first thing was the skill transfer set. So now, in risk of losing people, what we want to do is we want to provide a way for the people to the people of the company to know how to do a little bit of everything. That way, if one person who's really, really good leaves, we at least have some other people that can pick it up. And we looked at compensation. So how do we keep and how do we reward the people who are really, really good for us? We looked at possible solutions. You could reward them on a quarterly basis or reward them on when they get stuff done. For this type of culture, it probably makes more sense to reward people when they get stuff done and not make it so stringent and aligned with time. Lastly was technology. So even though it's a young culture, people still get annoyed if technology stuff isn't working. So we have HR service delivery, meaning we looked at how are people getting their staffing updates on time and their payments on time, as well as being able to voice and to be vocal about what's happening in the company. Okay? And we looked at performance reporting, and this is how are people being rated, and is there a way to put in place. So we're really using technology for these aspects, and this is how it will really help improve the talent of the people that we have, as well as maintain them. Okay, so this is an example of a human capital type of framework. And while these cases are very specific to specific firms, even if you're not doing it, you should still take a look and really understand how human capital cases work, just in case you get hit with this type of question. Okay, thank you, and I will see you in the next class.